Hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is Preparing for Your Content Knowledge Certification Exam. My name is Tracy Vasquez and I am here at Grand Canyon University in the College of Education, located here in Phoenix, Arizona. This webinar is intended to help you prepare for any type of exam, but specifically your Content Knowledge Certification Exam. Currently, all attendees are muted, and that is to help eliminate background noise. However, if you do have a question or a comment throughout the presentation, please raise the hand icon next to your name or type in the questions box below, and I will do my best to get to all of your questions before the end of the session. Also, hopefully we should have a little extra time at the end for some questions and answers. This session is being recorded and may be used at a later time. So let's go ahead and get started. And I always like to start with a brief scripture passage to get our minds straight and our heads in the right place. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And that is from Philippians 4:6-7. And here's today's agenda. I'll be going over understanding what are teacher candidate educator exams and understanding how the different types will affect you. Talking about what you need to study and the way that you can study most effectively. Also, we'll be looking at exam preparation tools, some tips regarding failing to plan is planning to fail, and general success on educator examinations. Also, I will be sending you an email to all attendees following this presentation with the attached slides, along with some additional tips that we won't have time to get to today. So now an introduction to Content Knowledge Certification Exams. And here at Grand Canyon University, our philosophy for exam preparation is very closely aligned with our philosophy of learning, leading, and serving. That's our College of Education philosophy, and we would hope that our teacher candidates going through our program will learn about the content that is presented. They will begin serving as leaders in their community, and they will also serve the educational community through their hard work, dedication, and advocacy. So as you're going through your coursework and your clinical practice experiences, you are progressing in that subject knowledge comprehension, along with the associated professional knowledge competencies, and you are moving towards that level of beginning teacher preparation. So your coursework, your field experiences, and any other performance measures are leading to support you becoming that learner-ready teacher. Now, in today's webinar, we'll be focusing on preparing for your certification exams with 3 points: that you are intentional in your dedication and preparation, that you read through this module in its entirety, and that you think through and develop a personalized plan for test preparation. And I will be showing you how to do that personalized plan as we go through today's webinar. First, let's get to the different exam types. Now, when you hear that certification exams are required to become a teacher in your state, you learn that there's very specific exams required for you in your certification path. And the required tests may be a combination of the following. You may have a basic skills exam to take that covers basic knowledge in reading, writing, and math. And if you do have to take the basic skills exam, typically this is encouraged to be taken early on in your program, as it is testing basic levels of understanding in these 3 content areas, the type of information that you learn throughout your K through 12 education. Another type of exam typically required is the content or subject knowledge exam. This exam will test your content area of expertise, the knowledge that you'll need to teach in a classroom. So sometimes you'll see it referred to as a content knowledge exam. Other times you'll see it referred to as a subject knowledge exam. Either way, it's still testing that same content, the content that you will be teaching to your classroom students one day. So for example, if you are going to be a secondary math instructor, a high school math teacher, then your content knowledge exam will be in secondary mathematics. If you are planning on being an elementary school teacher, your content knowledge exam will cover all of those core content areas that you teach as an elementary school teacher. And this content knowledge exam is taken prior to application for student teaching. Now the third type of exam that may be required is a professional knowledge exam. And this tests your pedagogical knowledge. All of that knowledge that you learn throughout the last few courses of your program, those methods courses about how to teach, those teaching skills that you'll need to be an effective teacher in the classroom. And sometimes this knowledge is tested through exam, and sometimes it's tested through assessment. For example, there is an online portfolio assessment that's taken in some states. It's called EdTPA. And if you're in one of those affected states, I'm sure you are already aware of this. Other states, such as Arizona, take their professional knowledge exam through an assessment. So as you can see, there's quite a different combination that you could be required to take. And so it's encouraged that you begin early on understanding what your requirements are and which tests you will be taking. Next, I'd like to get to exam providers, because just like many different exams that could be required, there's also many different exam providers. So each state Department of Education designates a specific exam provider. Arizona candidates usually will be taking the NES series of exams. There are a few candidates, such as our early childhood education candidates, that take the AEPA series. But for the most part, Arizona teacher candidates will take the NES series of exams, and candidates in other states may take other state-specific exams, or they may take one of the ETS series of exams. ETS is the exam provider for the Praxis series, GACE, and others. This is not a complete list of exams. There are many others. Some individual states have individual exams, such as, I believe, Michigan uses an MTTC. I think Illinois has another state-specific one, but it's really dependent upon your state and what the requirements are for certification there. And because this can be a little tricky, understanding which tests are required for you and your state, what is your certification pathway, we do have a special team of counselors here at Grand Canyon University. They are our field experience counselors. And these counselors can help you with practicum placement, professional exams, internship, or student teaching requirements. So what you need to study is very dependent upon the exam that you're planning on taking. So you'll follow the State Department of Education website, which will direct you to the certification requirements. Usually you'll be looking for initial certification requirements. And they will also state which exams are required for that certification. So when you learn what your state testing requirements are, find the test that you'll need to take on your State Department of Education website and notate that test name, and it may also have a test number. You definitely do not want to get confused about which test or tests you're required to take. And to help with that and more, we've created this candidate certification exam personalized study plan. And you'll see at the very top of this plan in the blue is where you'll notate the test name and maybe also test number if you have that. And then you'll work down in that second column, completing the planned information that you have. Test center is where you plan on taking the test. Even though most of these exams are computer-based, you still do have to go to a testing center to take the exam. So you can find a testing center not too far from where you live and write down where you plan on taking the exam. Hopefully you don't have to travel too far and won't need to make any travel arrangements, but in case you do, it's better to start planning that in advance. The test date on when you plan on taking the test. This is important to do so you can assure yourself you have plenty of time to prepare for the exam and plenty of time to receive your official passing test scores before your student teaching application deadline. Test competencies and objectives are what will be covered on the test, and I'll show you more about that in just a moment. Areas to focus are areas that you know are going to be areas for you to focus on during your study time. Maybe areas of weakness for you that you know you need to spend a little additional time reviewing in. Study days and times are the days and times during the day that you have time to prepare. It's best to block these in and schedule your study time so that you will not miss it. And then study space description will allow you to document where you will be preparing for your exam. That will be your designated study space. This is, of course, better than going to any random location and attempting to study. Studying at the beach, studying at Starbucks can often be distracting. So it's best to have a designated maybe desk or study room where you can set up all of your materials and focus on your preparation. Learning style is, of course, going to be the way you learn best, but it also often translates to the way you study best. We'll talk more about that later as well. And selected resources are going to be the resources that you use that align with the competencies covered on your exam that will help you prepare. Okay, I'll just do a quick check to see if there's any questions here before we move on. Yes, it does look like we have a question. Okay, Erica, I have unmuted you, but it looks like you're self-muted. So, hi, Erica.
Hello.
Hi, do you have a question for us?
No.
Okay, I'll go ahead and put your hand back down. Okay, are there any other questions before we move on? Okay. Looks like we have a question here from Donna. Hi, Donna.
My question is, I'm disabled, and I was just, most of my testing that I'm doing in my courses, I have a reader that reads to me. Am I allowed to have my reader, or it's mostly on the computer?
So that's a great question, Donna. Sometimes there are accommodations made in that type of a situation, and that's all going to be done through your exam provider. So you'll find out who that is, if it's NES or ETS, and you'll contact them directly to make that arrangement.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, let's go on then. Okay, let's get into the test framework competencies and objectives. So the test framework is really an outline. It's a tool for you to use that lists all of the domain areas that will be covered on the test. The domain areas are really those large areas of content, such as English, math, social studies. So you'll know what subject areas will be covered on your exam. Then the competencies and objectives are conceptual statements written in language that reflect the skills, knowledge, and understanding that you'll need to know to perform on the exam. So I'll show you what that looks like. You can retrieve this for free on these websites. If you are one of those candidates taking the NES series, you will retrieve your test framework from the website here. This is the site for the NES series, nestest.com. You click on Tests, and then you scroll down and select the test you're preparing to take. Maybe Elementary Education Subtest 1. And then on the right-hand side, you can click on Preparation Materials. And in the center of that module, you'll see Test Framework. Click on that. And there you'll see the test framework has populated. You can also save this by floating near the bottom of the page and clicking on the Save a Copy. That way you can save the test framework to your device. Now, if we scroll down here and take a look at this test framework, we'll see those domain areas. Domain 1 is Reading and English Language Arts. And then Competency 1 is a more specific knowledge that you'll need to perform under the Reading and English Language Arts category. Understand foundations of language development and emergent literacy. If you continue scrolling down, you'll get to Domain 2, Social Studies, and the individual competencies and objectives listed under there. So you can see, even just by reading through this test framework, you can make a judgment on some areas that you know you may need to focus your preparation. Now, if you are not in Arizona and you're otherwise not taking the NES series, you may be taking the Praxis. So I'll show you on the Praxis site how you can retrieve the Study Companion. The Study Companion is nearly the exact same thing as the test framework, only it's for the Praxis. So it again is an outline of what will be covered on the exam. Let's take a look here at the Praxis website, which is ets.org/praxis. You can click on the left-hand side where it says Prepare for a Test. Select the test by name. Make sure you are clicking on the exact test that you know you're going to need. And then at the top, you'll see the first item listed is the Study Companion. So you can click on the Study Companion, and there it loads. And if you scroll through, you'll see all of the information that's going to be contained on the exam. Here you'll see the subject area, as long as it's listed here, Domain 1, Reading and English Language Arts, and then the individual competencies and objectives. And if you continue scrolling down, you'll see we go on to Domain 2, Mathematics. So you can also save this by hovering towards the bottom and clicking on the Save a Copy. Okay, and if you're taking another type of exam, most often you are able to obtain either the test framework or the Study Companion through your exam provider's webpage, in a very similar way that we did just now. Now, the reason we look at this test framework, it's because exam content then becomes exam questions. This is an important distinction because we know exam questions don't become other exam questions. This is where sometimes students get into trouble. I advise you not to study exam questions. When you take a practice test and you receive exam questions, those exam questions are just one representation of the content that's listed on the test framework. The questions that you receive on your exam could be slightly different. So if you study the exam content, you will be prepared for the exam questions. If you study the exam questions, you may be surprised that nothing you study is on the test. I want to show you how that works. We'll go back to our exam provider site. Looking at the NES profiles, we'll select a test and click on Go. And now here in the center, you do see a chart that shows you how much of the percentage of the exam will be from a given domain. This is helpful because it shows us if 62% of the exam will be on reading and English language arts, we know it is probably of primary importance to study reading and English language arts more importantly than social studies. We still want to study social studies, but maybe we won't study quite as hard as the studies that we're doing for reading and English language arts. Now, if you click on one of these domain areas, you'll see that we also can bring up the competencies this way, the same competencies that you see on the test framework. But then if you click on one of these, you will see the descriptive statements, and then you will see a sample item. A young child says, "I drawed you a picture." The error in this sentence best illustrates which process of language development. I'll allow you some time to make your selection. And then we can click on Show, and we'll receive the correct response and explanation. This is an example of overgeneralizing a morphological rule. A. Now, that sample item could have been very helpful for you, and maybe it made you realize that you need to study morphological rules or examples of what children could say and how we can categorize those. But does that fall into any of these descriptive statements here? It probably best fits this one here. So that sample item does not represent all of the descriptive statements that could be covered under competency 0001. So we don't want to just study the sample item because it will not prepare us for all of these descriptive statements. And that's what typically happens when students study questions. Questions are still great for review and testing your knowledge and preparing for using your exam taking strategies, but they should not be your primary method of study. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about your personalized study plan. Remember, you're going to review your State Department of Education website and follow the links to your state's required exam provider, such as NES or ETS. And once you're on the exam provider site, you will find the content knowledge exam that's aligned with your program of study and the certification that you're seeking. Then you can write the correct test name and possibly number on top of your personalized study plan. You'll want to locate a test center near your place of residence, determine what day or time would be reasonable for you to prepare for and take your exam. Preparation does typically take approximately 12 weeks, so that could help you with the scheduling. Then you register for your exam. Write the information on your personalized study plan. Then you will locate the competencies and objectives for the exam you have selected. and write these on your personalized study plan, or at least save them to your device or potentially print them out for later reference. And then you'll want to reflect on your comfort level for each of the competencies and objectives and determine what are the areas that you need to focus on based on what you anticipate as challenges. Next, you'll want to take time to schedule. Consider what days and times will work best for you to prepare for the exam. Estimate 7 to 10 hours per week. Complete the study days and times row on your personalized study plan. We know that a problem many students have is that they don't know how to divide their study time in a proper way, and in this way they can spend too much time on just a small part of the topics that will be on the exam. So the best way to ensure you make it through preparing for all the topics that will be on your test framework is divide your study into sessions. Then you can create different tasks that can be accomplished individually, and these tasks should cover the whole material that you are trying to master. Each day, do some of the tasks in your schedule and check them off. Be realistic, but spend time on your tasks. You will see it becomes much easier to track your progress this way. It also will help you avoid the problem of trying to do everything in the previous day. If you have an idea of how much time it takes to do a task, you will have a much better chance of accomplishing it on time. Consider where you will prepare for the exam and study regularly. Then you can complete the row for days and times on your personalized study plan. I like to study sitting up in a chair at a desk near a window. I find that the natural lighting will help keep me awake and responsive to the material that I'm reviewing. So whatever works best for you. If you're studying late at night, you may not have the natural lighting, but you can turn on a lamp that's maybe easier on your eyes rather than overhead lighting. What strategies can students use while they study to help them succeed on content exams? So we're going to talk about how you can personalize study methods. As I read the questions, reflect on how you would respond. How do I learn best? Do I require a quiet space to study? Do I prefer to read information first and then try to apply it? Do I work best at a task in large or small chunks? We'll be using the next few slides to reflect on your preferred learning style. We'll be selecting preparation methods that align with your preferred learning style, and this will make the preparation process intuitive and manageable. Once you have some ideas about your own learning style, you will be able to complete the learning style row on your personalized study plan. So take a look here at some of the different learning styles that you may have a part of your learning style. Think about which one most aligns with your preferences. Personally, I find that I am more of a visual learner. I like to draw thinking maps to represent the content. Not only does making the thinking map help me review the information, but then I also have a study sheet that I can refer back to regularly to help review the content. If you are a kinesthetic learner, you may find that even walking on a treadmill while you're studying, you could study on your iPad while you're just walking in place, could be helpful. So you can see here that different types of learners can apply different study strategies. Next, I'd like to encourage all of you to read in your subject area. The reason for this is it will help you learn the language, and then when you're taking the exam, the syntax and discourse, the way the questions are formatted, even the vocabulary will be familiar to you. You'll be able to read through the questions more quickly, and you'll be able to come to an answer in a more timely manner. It doesn't have to be books. You can also seek out websites and online forums. Even talking with other professionals in your subject area will help you really become confident in the language. Another technique you can apply is strength in numbers. There are many different reasons why studying with a partner or group can help. It does not have to be a meeting in person. You can study electronically with one another, meeting virtually, or even meeting over the phone. I also do encourage the use of flashcards. There are a few online flashcard apps in the upper right-hand corner there in the purple box. But typically, if you're trying to learn a great deal of terminology or formulas, flashcards can be extremely helpful. You can make your own, or you can purchase flashcards to study for your exam. Another strategy is the use of mnemonics. These are great for remembering lists and procedures. We've all heard the mnemonic, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally," to help us remember parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Let's move on to selecting exam preparation resources. Now, the exam provider, whether that be NES, Praxis, ETS, they typically provide some preparation materials. These may be free or they may be of charge, but it's always a good place to start first when you're looking for resources. So we're going to use the next few slides to review potential resources, and I'll show you a selecting resource materials chart that you can use to help you determine what would best support you according to your time constraints, monetary constraints, and learning preferences. And when you have that all sorted out, you can complete the selecting resources row on your personalized study plan. So when you gather your materials, keep in mind your learning style and the competencies and objectives that you need to master. And you may use any of these items, lecture notes, journals, reputable websites. Just make sure you keep them all organized in your study space for handy reference. Also, we want you to know that GCU does offer candidate resources as well. We have the GCU Learning Lounge, webinars, and online tutoring services. If you are preparing for the NES Elementary Content Knowledge exam, you can use these instructions to request tutoring over TutorTrack. Also, there are external websites that offer test preparation. Just make sure that if you are using an external website that you know what you're getting, and if it's a paid preparation site that you know what you're paying for, because there are many scams out there and often students can be disappointed when they pay for something that they don't know what they're getting. You also really need to be careful that the materials you're getting are aligned with your exam. GCU does not endorse any particular external companies, and you are advised to carefully select your materials for exam preparation and follow your personalized study plan that will allow for an adequate timetable. In just a minute, I'll show you our Selecting Resource Materials chart, which you can use to select your materials. And we know it is more beneficial to have a few select thorough resources than to have too many resources that can be overwhelming. And here is the Selecting Resource Materials chart. Helps you think through the learning preferences, monetary preferences, and time preferences. And then once you have a good idea, you can start sorting and identifying materials. So you can really nail down which materials would be most helpful for you to use for your preparation process. I want to speak a little bit about a practice test. If your selected resource materials do not include a practice test and you have not yet taken your exam, it is recommended that you take a practice test to begin your preparation. The reason for this is it will give you a breakdown of your performance by domain area, and you'll know the areas that you need to focus prior to taking your exam. And a practice test may be available from your exam provider. However, there may be a small fee for this. But consider that the fee may be less than what it would cost you to take the test and fail and have to retake the test. Make sure you do analyze your practice score report and look for domain areas that you need to focus more and determine raw scores versus points, and that will help you identify content and domain areas where there is the most opportunity for growth. Likewise, if you have already taken your exam, you already have a score report you can take a look at. This is the information that was taken from a test taker's score report. And we see here that this test taker did pass the exam, but I still want to use this as an example for you. So take a look here on the domain areas. This test taker did very well in many areas, but also did poorly in some areas. Now, while this test taker did end up passing the exam, I would say we can mostly attribute that to the fact that the majority of the score for this exam is associated with domain 1, Reading and English Language Arts. So because he or she focused their efforts on this area, he or she was able to pass the exam, even doing poorly in social studies. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, if this was your practice test and you wanted to determine where you could study more, where you could focus your studies, what might you suggest for this test taker? Type in the questions box or raise your hand, and I will call on you. Okay. Erica? Oh, Erica, looks like, oh,
Yes.
hi.
Hello.
What would you suggest for this test taker?
Everything seems good so far.
I'm sorry, I can just hardly hear you.
Everything seems good so far.
Everything seems good so far?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Madeline? Madeline? Madeline, it looks like you are self-muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, I would suggest she would test more in the for English reading and English language arts,
Yes.
purpose and text graphic.
Yes, thank you, Madeline. Yes, I would also agree with you that this test taker needs to focus more on competency 0004, purpose of text and graphic sources, because we know that a good portion of the score comes from performance in this domain area, reading English language arts. And 0004 was really the only competency area where the student performed poorly in the reading English language arts category. So by boosting performance in purpose of text and graphic sources, he or she could likely boost her score, his or her score, just enough to get over that threshold for the passing score. Of course, if there's a lot of extra time between when this test taker plans on retaking the test, he or she could also review domains 6, 7, and 8 for social studies. But I would say it's definitely of primary importance that he or she study 0004. Thank you. Now, this is a preparation log and reflection documentation that can be used to help you keep track of your preparation time as you're studying for the exam. So what you'll do is mark your calendar for your selected test date and count back a minimum of 12 weeks. Circle this date, and this is the date to start your focused test preparation. During these 12 weeks, as you count down to test day, keep a log of your study hours on the preparation log and reflection documentation here. And this tracking will help to ensure you are putting in adequate preparation time and making the best use of your time leading up till test day. These reflection questions are intended to be used once a week. When you're tallying up all the preparation time you've put in for the week, also take a minute to do these reflection questions. They will help you make best use of your time for the following week. And you can, of course, duplicate this chart so that you can use it once a week. Now, failing to plan is planning to fail. Now, when you're preparing for an exam, it really falls into three areas where you need to work. You need to follow preparation. Preparation for an exam takes focus, time, and tools. Reflection can determine if the tools and study schedule need modification. That's where it helps to do those weekly reflection questions. And then strategy. Strategy involves metacognitive thinking and personalization of your preparation. So to help think through how you can use preparation, reflection, and strategy, I have a couple scenarios for you here. We're just going to do Jane's scenario quickly because we are getting a little short on time. So look in the purple box for the resources Jane will use in this scenario, how she comes to those decisions. Jane has researched the testing requirements for her state. She is preparing for the NES mathematics exam. After reviewing the test framework, she notices a large portion of the exam is on algebra. She feels this is an area of strength. To be certain, she reviews the objectives aligned with the algebra domain. She notices some academic vocabulary and terminology that seems unfamiliar. She visits mathwords.com to review the terms she is unfamiliar with. Then she visits the Khan Academy site and Purple Math website to increase her understanding of the topics. Having started with the algebra topics, she jots down a few objectives in this area she would like to work on more tomorrow. She also plans to meet with a colleague to discuss algebra solutions. So did you see how Jane was able to use the test framework and then free available resources to work on preparing for her exam? In this way, you can also use preparation, reflection, and strategy to prepare for the exam of your choice. Remember, preparing for an exam does take time, approximately 3 to 6 months. You can access a variety of preparation resources to assist in your development. And make sure you plan a reasonable timetable for preparation, practice, registration, test administration, and scoring. Now, on the morning of the test, please get up early so you can get ready and arrive early. You can sit where you are most comfortable. You can pick out your seat. Make sure you know where you're going. You can print out directions, or you can enter the address into an electronic navigation tool. It helps if it's close by that you take a test drive and maybe drive by there in the morning or in the afternoon whenever you plan on taking the test, so you'll have an idea for traffic. Make sure you dress comfortably so you will not fidget with your clothing. Also bring layers, so if you're cold or hot, you can make the adjustments. Bring a snack if you have a break between sections. Avoid people who are anxious and might cause you to doubt your knowledge. Go to the restroom and take any personal breaks before walking into the exam room. And give yourself a pep talk. Know that you have prepared for this exam. You are ready to show your knowledge and become a teacher. Good luck. I will send you all the materials from this presentation, as well as the exam strategies handout, which we did not have time to get to today. And good luck on your preparations. We do have some time now for questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will unmute you, or you can type into the questions box. Okay, Erica. Erica, it looks like you have a question, but you are self-muted. Okay, does anyone else have a question? Okay, Angela.
I wanted to know about how long the tests run.
All of that information can be found on the exam provider site. So, for example, if you're looking for ETS, if you look on this framework here, it shows you that this test is 150 minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good question. And likewise, you can also find answers about other things for the test on this sheet here. Talks about familiarizing yourself with test questions, developing a study plan, smart tips for success, testing accommodations. Someone had a question about that earlier. You can see that on page 55. Of course, this is for the Praxis. If you're looking for the NES, make sure you refer to the NES website here. You'll see there's a few other resources here you can look at for free. Angela,
Yes.
did you have another question?
No.
Okay, that's okay. I'll put your hand down. Erica, did you have a question?
I want to say thank you for the information.
You're welcome. Okay. Madeline? Madeline, you are self-muted.
Okay. I download the early childhood education, the ETS practice before,
Okay.
and I self-test myself. So should I do it again?
Yeah, you could do it again. How long ago was it?
It was like a month ago.
A month ago? Have you been doing a lot of studying since then?
No.
Then you probably don't need to retest right now. I would just take a look at your results of what areas you maybe did poorly in and where you could best focus your studies and really focus on those areas. If you need to look up additional resources for those areas, you can do so either through our GCU Learning Lounge, library, or on the internet.
Is there other material that like I can purchase for those, you know?
If you're going to purchase materials, I would strongly recommend that you purchase the ones offered by your exam provider.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, someone says they are in the Special Education Master's Program. They have passed the Praxis mild to moderate exam. Is there any other exam for me to take? Possibly. Some states also require that you take the elementary content knowledge exam. So to be safe, I would recommend that you check with your field experience counselor. The field experience counselor team is regionalized. So what that means is they only work with students in 1 or 2 states, and they are very familiar with what tests you need to take for your state. So if you're not sure who your assigned field experience counselor is, you can ask your student services counselor. But I definitely recommend that you speak to your field experience counselor when you're deciding on which exams are required to take. Okay, Erica, do you have another question?
No?
Okay, thank you. Okay, it looks like we've gotten to all the questions. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box. But I thank you all for joining me today. I will stay on just to answer any last-minute questions, but I think we're pretty much going to wrap up now. We're just about at our 10 o'clock mark. So again, thank you for joining us. I hope it was beneficial, and I wish you all the great success on your exam. Have a wonderful test day.